So guys, in today's tutorial vlog, I'm going to be showing us how to cut and sew this shirt for ladies, okay? And we'll be needing the following measurements. So for this shirt, the size of fabric required is about 1.5 yards, okay? So what I'm going to do now is to cut out the fabric. First of all, I'm taking my measurements. So this is 1 yard fabric. I also have an extra piece somewhere which I'll be adding to cut out the size of fabric for the front. Okay, so the measurements I'm taking now is going to be for the back. So the length of this shirt is actually 30 inches long. So I added an extra 1 inch to it so I would be able to fold and run my stitch at the base of the shirt. Okay, so the measurement I just took now is the length of the shirt, and you can see that this fabric is in a fold. Okay, so this particular one I'm cutting now is going to be the back portion of our shirt. So this one I've cut out is for the back. So now the extra piece I had is what I just brought now. So I'll be cutting 2 separate pieces of the same length. Okay, so I'm placing the fabric for the back now on the one for the front. Okay, you can see that the one for the front, which are 2 separate pieces, are actually wider. So I'll just go right ahead and cut out the same length with the back piece. Okay, so you can see I'm taking my measurements again. So I have about 3 inches extra for the piece of fabric which I'll be using for the front of my shirt. I hope you understand. So the piece of fabric for the front are 2 separate pieces which will be buttoning at the front, okay, while the one for the back is 1 piece folded in 2. All right, so the first measurement I'm taking now is actually shoulder to bust. Okay, so the measurement I'm taking at the top is the shoulder to shoulder measurement divided into 2. So I'll just connect that with the bust line. Okay, so I didn't bother to draw my bust line, so I just made an indication there. So from this now, I'm going to be taking the above bust measurement, which is 2 inches above the bust line, so as to be able to take my armhole measurement. So that line you saw there is the bust line, and then the one above is the above bust line. So I'm taking my armhole curve right now, and the reasons why I'm taking this armhole measurement is because I've done another tutorial video where I explain how to actually get the measurement for your armhole. So it is usually your bust circumference divided into 6, and then you add 1.5 inch to it. Okay, so the next measurement I took now is the neck, okay, which is 3 inches wide and 2 inches deep. That's for the back. So for the front piece, I'm going to be taking 3 inches deep and 3 inches wide. So the back piece is 3 inches over 2 inches, while the front piece is 3 inches over 3 inches. I'd already gone ahead to cut my shoulder, to draft my shoulder slope. So if you've been following my tutorial video, you would have seen how I give these basic draft patterns. Okay, so it's the same basic technique and it's straightforward. So I'm cutting the shoulder slope now, and I'll also be cutting my armhole. Okay, so you could actually see why I indicated with my chalk below the armhole 2 notch there. So the first one is my bust circumference, which is 40 inches divided into 4. So it gave me 10. Then I added extra 2 inch seam allowance to it. So for my shirt, I didn't want it to be fitted. So that's why you're not seeing waist measurements. Okay, so I went straight ahead to draft a curve at the bottom of it. So I drew my curve with my free hand. So if you have your curve ruler, you can also do that. So that is basically it for the measurements for this shirt. Okay, so for the front piece, you can see I'm actually placing the front fabric, okay, on the back. So the back fabric is the one that is folded in two, which is a single fabric, while the front are two separate fabric. So the next thing I'm going to do there is to go over to the sewing machine to sew the shoulders together. So I've done that now, as you can see. So next I'll be taking my bust line measurement again. Okay, so I can actually get the measurement for the sides of this shirt. Okay, so my bust measurement from shoulder to bust to the bust line is 10 inches. Okay, from my shoulder to this bust line is actually 10 inches. Okay, so you remember we added 2 extra inch allowance to both sides of our shirt. So I'm going to be taking my measurements again. So this time it's going to be 40 inches divided by 2, which is going to be 20. So I've removed the 2 inches on both sides now, and I'm trying to fit my shirt. So I'll just take my line down. So for my shirt, I didn't want the sides to be straight, so you can see the way I shaped my shirt. So it's your choice. If you want your shirt to be very fitted, you can take your measurement and make it fitted. So mine was not so fitted. I wanted it to be a little bit free. Okay, so it depends on what you actually want. Okay, so you can see how I've taken my measurement. So next I went over to the sewing machine to stitch both sides together. So having done that, the next thing I'm doing now is making a fold. Okay, so this is actually the button area and also the buttonhole area. So ensure that while making your fold, your shirts laps on each other properly. Okay, so after making your fold, ensure that when placing the two fabric for the front together, it is lapping properly on top of each other. Okay, so you can see that after making my fold, my the area for the button and the buttonhole is lapping directly on top of each other. Okay, so you can see it's neatly sewn now. So the next thing I'm going to do is to go over to the sewing machine to run both sides that have the curve. So I'll run the front and also for the back. So next I'm trying to take my neck measurement so I'll be able to draft my collar. Remember, this is a shirt, a female shirt with a collar. Okay, so for this particular shirt pattern we are making, I actually used the simple drafting pattern for making collars. This pattern is what most people use when sewing school uniforms for school. So as a beginner, this pattern is suitable for you. I will drop in the description box the link to my other video where I did basic pattern drafting, as in tutorial on how to sew a collar shirt. Okay, so you would be able to learn how to draft the other pattern from my other tutorial video. So I'd gone ahead to cut out the piece of fabric which I'll be requiring for my collar. Okay, so I went ahead to fold it in two. So the measurement I'm trying to get now is the same measurement I have after taking my measurements on my collar. So the measurement I took then is what I'm trying to get now. Okay, so I added like a little less than 1 inch to both sides for my seam allowance. Okay, so having taken that measurement, I'm cutting the fabric now in 2 pieces. Okay, see that I'm still trying to get the actual length of the collar measurement I took earlier from the shirt. Okay, so haven't done that. I'm trying to make a fold now, and then I'll be drafting the simple pattern of a collar on this piece of fabric. It is quite simple. Okay, so I'm simply making a curve on about 1 inch. Okay, from the base of the fabric there, the curve I'm taking is about 1 inch. Okay, and then I'll just go straight ahead to connect it. So this is the basic pattern drafting for a collar. So any beginner should be able to draft this pattern. So if you're learning, you want to try it out, this is the right pattern for you as a beginner, this collar pattern. Okay, so you could use your free hand. You could also use your tape to take the measurement of 1 inch first before you draft the curve and then your slant. So that is our collar pattern, as you can see. So I have 2 pieces of fabric there, so I'll go straight ahead now to run my stitch on top of the shirt. Okay, so but before then, you can see I'm trying to attach my stay or gum stay on the collar. So either of the two is okay. So I'll use the fabric to draft the same pattern on my gum stay, as you can see me do. So please ensure that your gum stay is a little smaller than the fabric so it will fit in properly. Okay, so I still went further to make adjustments to this gum stay because it was actually bigger than the fabric. So I'd gone ahead now to sew my piece of fabric together, and I flipped it over to the right side before placing my gum stay in. Okay, for some persons, especially those who have regular power supply, it is advisable to iron your gum stay on your fabric before going over to the sewing machine to run your stitch. Okay, so for this one, because there wasn't light, I had to stitch my fabric first and then just went straight ahead to fix my gum stay inward. So whenever I have light, I would iron out my fabric and then the gum stay will stay properly on it. Okay, so as you can see, I've gone ahead now to sew the gum stay. All right, at the middle, you can see I ran a straight parallel stitch. Okay, at the middle of this collar. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is attaching my collar on my shirt. So the first thing I'm going to try to do now is to get the middle of the neck. Okay, so I'm going to try to get the middle of the neck measurement. Okay, so when I get the middle of the neck measurement, I would simply make a notch. Okay, so I'll make a notch at the middle. It is actually advisable to start your stitch from the middle of the neck, but for this simple technique, I went straight ahead to stitch from one edge of this collar to the other end. So if you're going to use this method, if the collar happens to be longer than your shirt, please ensure to loosen one side, the side that is longer, recut it, and then run your stitch. So please take note that I stitched the collar of the neck of the shirt to one side of the collar. So what I'm trying to do now is to make a fold on the one I had run stitch on. So the remaining piece of fabric of the collar, you can see I'm trying to fold it inwards before going to run a top stitch on it. Okay, so for this, the first thing to do there is to attach the piece of collar fabric, okay, with the right sides facing each other, okay, and then running a top stitch. And then the remaining one, which is what I'm doing now, is what you simply fold on and do a top stitch as I indicate with my finger. So now I'm done attaching my collar to my shirt, and as you can see, it came out neatly. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to make a fold around the cuff, okay, and then I'll go over to the sewing machine to run my stitches, okay. So you can see it has already taken the shape of a shirt already. So what I did here was I wanted the cuff to be deep, okay. I wanted it to go up a little bit more. So I'm simply losing both sides now before making my fold for the cuff, okay. So it depends on you. If you want your cuff to be longer or to go up, you could do that. But if you want it to be lower, you could also do that. So I simply made adjustment to mine, okay, before folding my cuff, okay. So this was actually tough. So making a fold around the cuff is sometimes difficult. If you're not careful, your fabric could squeeze and then you would not be able to actually get your cuff shape. So ensure you make your fold neatly so your fabric will not be squeezed. So the last and final thing we're going to do on our shirt is to draft our basic sleeve pattern. So it's a short sleeve, and if you've been following my tutorial videos, you would have seen numerous times where I drafted a basic sleeve pattern. So it's a simple technique. I'm using my free hand, so you could use your curve ruler, okay. So you simply go up by 3 or 4 inches, okay, and then draft your pattern. So that is the basic pattern drafting for a sleeve, okay. So please ensure to take your armhole measurement and then add extra 1 inch allowance to your fabric, okay, before taking your sleeve measurement on the fabric for your sleeve, okay. So I'm done cutting out my sleeve pattern. So if you're a beginner, you could try this on paper first, so you can make a rough pattern drafting. So what I'm doing now is I'm simply folding my sleeve, okay, at the edge. So I'll do that for the other piece of sleeve fabric, and then I'll go over to the sewing machine to run my stitches. So I'm done running my stitches. So I'm going to be attaching my sleeve now to my shirt. So what I did was to fold my sleeve in two. So I'm trying to get the middle of my sleeve, okay. So I want to make a notch at the middle there. So when attaching it to my shirt, one side will not be longer than the other. So I'll be placing that area with the notch at the top of my sleeve shirt. So you can see the way my shirt is placed then before I place the sleeve on it, okay. So I will also do this for the other side of the shirt, for the other hand of the shirt, okay. And after doing that, what will be left for our shirt would be our button in our buttonhole, okay. So at this point, our tutorial video is as good as done. So if you haven't subscribed, kindly hit the subscribe button and give your girl a thumbs up. So guys, our shirt is ready. Next, I would simply iron it out. Okay, so if you haven't seen my tutorial video on how to cut and sew a short pants, which I used to combine this my shirt, I'll be linking below in the description box the link to that video. Okay, and I'll also be adding the other link for how to draft a basic collar. So guys, thanks for watching today's vlog. See you in our next tutorial video. Bye.